Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabian Poulin, and I will be chairing this hearing today. Procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with an agenda item in a different order. Members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions from any interested parties. Notice regarding minor variance application, notwithstanding pre-consultation with city staff, it is the responsibility of the applicant to identify all required variances accurately on the application to either add a new variance or increase the extent of the variance requested. It must be given in accordance with the Planning Act and may require the application to be recirculated for the next hearing date at a cost to the applicant at the prescribed fee. If an applicant amends their plans with no impact to the variances or to reduce the variance requested, recirculation may not be required. Appealing a decision of the committee. Decisions of the Committee of Adjustment may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a fee within 20 days of the date of the written decision. Only the applicant, the minister, or a specified person or a public body that has an interest in the matter may appeal the decision. A specified person does not include an individual or community association. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that we have received all statutory declarations?
We have not received all statutory declarations.
Thank you very much. I will administer the oath to each applicant. The committee may ask for a brief presentation of the application, followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the chair's discretion. Before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or on the agenda of another committee panel? Yes, Ms. Chandler?
I have a conflict on an application today. It is number 2 at 1391 Huntmar.
Thank you very much. We'll hear that application at the end of our hearing today. We also have minutes to adopt from the last public hearings, and I'd like to ask the panel to approve the minutes of March the 1st. I was not there, nor was Member Otto, so I'd ask the other 3 members to please approve these minutes. All those in favor, please raise your hands. We also have March 15, 2023 minutes to adopt. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Those minutes are also adopted. We will now hear the applications included for scheduled for this hearing, and we'll deal firstly with any items that may be adjourned. Is there anyone present who wishes to request an adjournment of one of the applications scheduled for this hearing? I believe we have 2, and they are the same property. They are having to do with 6151 First Line Road. And I'm looking for Evan Saunders. Are you available? Evan Saunders.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Are you looking to have your applications adjourned this morning?
No, the staff report indicated that staff would seek for the application to be adjourned, but we are prepared to proceed with the application.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Teeth, would you like to address this adjournment request of yours?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. So we're objecting based on the official plan policies for the rural countryside for this one.
The same having to do with the wording that we've had to deal with in the past? Okay, thanks.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so I'd like to ask the panel if they'd like to hear this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. We'll hear your application in order, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to application number 1. And application number 1 has to do with 3593 Trim Road. Danielle St. Pierre. Mr. and Mrs. St. Pierre. Oh, I see your name. You're muted, sir.
Hello.
Good morning.
I can put on the video too if you would like, or
Sure, if you'd like to add we'd like to see a face. That's always nice. Mr. St. Pierre, I would like to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Can you take that oath today?
yes, sure.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yes, I do swear.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to give us a brief description of your application today?
Yeah, I'm trying to apply for a minor variance for rear yard setback and also a percentage of the lot for an addition to the current garage.
Thank you very much, sir. I note for the panel that planning department has no concerns and conservation partners have no concerns as well. But I'd like to ask, first of all, planning if they would please make a comment on this application.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have no concerns with the proposed minor variance and believe that it meets the 4 tests.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask our conservation partners if they have any comments to make with respect to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Conservation Authority didn't have any concerns with this. The OSSO has asked for more information about the location of the septic system. I think their concern is that it may not meet the setback requirements for the new structure.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the panel now for any comments or concerns they may have. Ms. Chandler?
Does the applicant know where a septic system is?
I do, yes.
Is it anywhere in the vicinity of this new garage construction?
Well, it's fine with the 5-meter setback. There's no issues with that.
Like to the edge of the bed?
Yeah, exactly.
So you may have to, before you get a building permit, you may have to get clearance from the Ottawa Septic System Office for that.
Okay.
Okay, the building permit people will let you know.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Mr. Vervoort, any comments or questions?
No questions, comments, or concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
Comments or concerns? Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
I'm fine with the application, thanks.
Thank you very much. I note that there are no conditions, and I would like to ask the panel to please approve this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. St. Pierre. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will skip over number 2, move that to the end, and now we will deal with applications number 3 and 4. Mr. Saunders, are you available?
Good morning again, Chair.
Good morning. I'd like to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on the property. Can you take that oath today?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do swear.
Please proceed with a brief description of your applications today.
So our proposal is two applications. One, a consent to sever the property along 6151 First Line Road, maintaining frontage for both the retained and severed parcels, as well as a minor variance to address section 67 subsection 1 of the zoning bylaw pertaining to setbacks from the ME2 mineral extraction subzone 2 zone on the property. The mineral extraction site has been decommissioned. And recently, the city has initiated a city-initiated omnibus zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the lands to RU, recognizing and reflecting the decommissioned nature of the pit. And the minor variance seeks to permit a residential development within 100 meters of the ME2 zone as of now.
Okay. And you're aware that there are 6 conditions on this application, should it be approved today?
Yes, we've spoken with our client and they are comfortable with the conditions.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Mr. Tieft to make some comments regarding this application. Mr. Tieft.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We have no concerns with the application apart from the issue with the official plan.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask our conservation partners for comments with respect to this application, these 2 applications.
The Conservation Authority has no objections to the application. There are water courses present on the property, the retained lot specifically, and making sure that if there's any alterations to those water courses, they contact our office prior to engaging in any of those activities. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Lalonde. Now I'd like to ask the panel for their comments or questions. Mr. Lewis.
I have no problems with the application. Will the timing, by the time that when the city gets the wording properly, will that be within the 2 years, or how's that going to work?
Mr. Tieft.
Yes, so to my knowledge, we're supposed to be getting that sometime Q2 this year. So hopefully sooner than 2 years.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I just don't want to see applicant run out of time.
So Q2 is the end of June this year. So literally a month and a half. Or 2.5 months. Okay. Mr. Otto, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I'm fine with the application as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rivord?
I'm fine with the application as well. I was just wondering, maybe I can ask Mr. Tieft, wouldn't it make more sense to, instead of doing it by way of minor variance, just have a condition that the that the mineral extraction zone be rezoned as a condition of the severance, or is the timing of that uncertain?
Mr. Tieft?
So I believe the rezoning is scheduled to go ahead as of the next ARAC meeting in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that would make the minor variance sort of redundant, I guess, then, eh? I mean, I'm fine either way. I was just asking the question because it seemed to me that a simpler way would have been just to condition it on the rezoning of the ME zone, and then we wouldn't need the minor variance, I believe.
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to understand that. I'm fine with the application and the minor variance.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler?
I guess just pursuant to Mr. Vervoort's question. So I understand that the omnibus will change the ME zone where the license has been surrendered, I presume because there's no more material left there that's economically viable to remove, and that, okay, well, first the license has been surrendered and accepted by MNRF, and that the zoning bylaw amendment that the city is bringing forwards under the omnibus is based on the fact that they don't see any more mineral extraction potential in that property. Is that correct?
To the chair, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So like Mr. Vervoort, I'm curious why not wait till May and not do this without a minor variance, but it doesn't make a difference one way or the other. So I don't have any concerns with the application.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask the panel for approval of this application with all 6 conditions. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Your application is approved. Mr. Saunders, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Now we're moving on to application number 5, having to do with 5084 Cannon Smith Drive. Mr. Shipman, are you available?
Mr. Chair, Jeff Shipman does not seem to be on the call.
Okay. We'll give him a few moments. We'll step this one down and we'll move on to application number 6. Application number 6 has to do with 3057 Greenland Road. Ms. Zander, are you available?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is Chris Clark from Zanderplan. I'll be handling this application.
Thank you very much. I'd like to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on the property. Can you take that oath today?
I can, yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Thank you very much, sir. Would you please provide us with a brief description of your application today?
Yeah, I prepared a quick presentation. I don't know if you'd like me to just go through that quickly for
Please
you
do.
and then,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next slide, please. So this is the subject property, 3057 Greenland Road. And you can also see some of the discussion we're going to have today is about the pit operation to the northwest there. So you can kind of see the wet areas and stuff where the extractions happened. Next slide. So this just approximately shows where the two severances are proposed over the aerial photo. So severance 1 is the L-shaped parcel on the south end. Severance 2 is the almost square-shaped parcel at the north end of the property. Next slide, please. So there was some question about access in the comments. The plan for access here is to use the existing residential entrance for severance number 1, the L-shaped parcel. The retained lands would get a new entrance off of Greenland Road. And severance number 2, there's an existing entrance with a culvert already at the far north end of the property. So it's anticipated that the hope would be that severance could use that access. Next slide. So the main sort of concerns seem to be with severance number 1. There's 2 accessory buildings to be retained within the severance. Those are slightly down the hill. You can kind of see them on the aerial photo. The owners of the property intend to retain severance number 1 to build their new home. So the reason we've proposed severance number 1 with that configuration is those are his storage buildings and he'd like to keep them. So we've extended the lot a little bit further down the property, down the slope in order to capture those buildings. Next slide, please. So we could talk about the conditions later, but there's no new buildings proposed within the sloped area or within the Natural Heritage System core area. The new dwelling would go at a similar setback to the dwellings that are along Greenland Road now, which is about 50 meters from the slope. And the lot itself was shown about 50 meters from the regulation limit, but it is within the core area slightly. Next slide, please. So the aggregate operation, looks to be extracted all the way to its southern boundary. And I just wanted to show, you can see there's an established pattern of development there along Greenland Road with all the various homes that have been built. And several new homes have been proposed and approved near the corner of Vance's Side Road and Greenland Road, much closer to the pit than we are. Next slide, please. This is Schedule B9 of the official plan. So the pit is not in the sand and gravel overlay. So there were some comments about that in the comments we received. Next slide. So the proposed lots, both are 300 meters from the pit, and the pit is not designated sand and gravel overlay in the official plan. So that's why we'd like to just talk about a couple of those conditions that were triggered because of it. Next slide, please. And the distances were established based on the survey. We're part 2, which is the middle lot, and the pit is picked up the boundary. So the distances I show on my sketch are fairly accurate. Next slide, please. So in terms of the noise study and MRIA, the noise study is triggered for any development within 300 meters of a pit. So the one severance is 297 meters away, but basically the new development, once you work in side yard setbacks and rear yard setbacks, will be well over 300 meters away. In terms of the pit expanding, it could happen, but it would require a lot of work, including OPAs, new ARA applications, and there is private property in between our lot and the pit. So the other thing our client brought up was he doesn't even think the pit is open at this point. I tried to find out if it was. He says it's pretty derelict. The scale house is, all the windows are smashed in. There's nothing on the site. So he wonders, are we doing studies for a pit that's not even in operation at this point? Next slide, please. So in conclusion, I think we could probably waive the noise study based on the distance, but we'd like to discuss some of those conditions if the committee would give us the time to do that.
Yep, we will, definitely.
Thanks.
So we've got a total of 13 conditions there, Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Are you in agreement with all of them?
Well, we're in agreement with some of them, but again, the slope stability study, I can understand if new development, like a new built development, is proposed near the slope. I don't understand the benefit of doing the slope stability study to support the severance when there's no built development proposed. So we'd like to inquire as to whether or not we could maybe make that a condition of development when the actual building is proposed on the lot as opposed to now. And then in terms of the EIS, we can pull the lot back further away from the natural areas. The reason the lot is partly within the core area is, again, we're trying to capture the 2 accessory buildings so that the owner doesn't lose them. But we can pull the lot back another 40 some odd meters further away from the natural heritage if that would make a difference. He had the land area, so he just made the lot slightly bigger.
Okay,
so
just those 2?
I mean, the mineral resource impact, I can't really argue that. If that's required, then we'll have to do that. In terms of the noise study, the one severance is more than 300 meters away, and the other severance is 297 meters away from the pit. So the trigger is within 300 meters of a pit. So if that's the case, we'll pull severance 2 back 3 meters so that it's beyond the trigger, and then we can waive that requirement if that's acceptable.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
now
you.
I'd like to ask Mr. Graham to make some comments on this application.
Thank you, Chair. So the planning department would be in agreement with waiving the MRIA and with the noise study, as the development would take place out of the 300 meters with zoning setbacks. So we would be agreeable to removing those conditions. As for the EIS, we would still require the EIS as those accessory buildings are within the core area, and generally the department does not support fragmenting these natural features. So we would still require the EIS. Perhaps a development envelope on the lot for future development would be able to satisfy environmental concerns, but we would not want to remove the EIS condition for severance, the southern severance, the existing buildings.
So just to be certain, number 5, the mineral resource impact assessment report you'd remove?
We would be willing to remove that, yes.
And what's the other one you would like to remove?
The noise study.
Number 6.
Number 6, yes.
Can you address Mr. Clark's concern for number 9 and number 11? Number 9 is the EIS, which you already did. Sorry about that. 11 is a slope stability report.
So the slope stability report was requested by our engineering staff, as the existing building is within a steep slope. And so engineering staff requested it due to future development being possible there if the severance was approved. So since the slope is within the delineation of the severance, it was requested as part of a condition.
Okay. Do you have any further comments, Mr. Clark?
I'm just curious what they're assessing for buildings that are already there. I mean, the accessory buildings were built by the previous owner prior to the Slevins even owning the property. So they've always been there for years, and they're not proposing any new development on or near the slope at this point. They just want to capture those buildings. So, I mean, in the future, yeah, if they have to put in a house and septic closer to the slope, there could be a reason to do a slope stability at that time. I don't see what benefit it brings to assess what's already there. Like what are we assessing is what I'm asking.
Graham?
The slope stability study would be assessing whether the lot is appropriate to have a house developed in the future. It's not assessing the existing buildings necessarily.
Well, there's an established pattern of development across this whole road. I mean, there's similar depth of houses all across this side of Greenland Road, and that's the intention of our client, is to build at a similar setback. So, I mean, if it's required, we'll do it ultimately, but I just don't really see the benefit of it as a condition of the severance. Is my comment.
Okay. Thank you. No, I'd like to ask the panel I'd like to ask the conservation partners. They've got some comments about this application.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, MBCA's information sources identify a watercourse and a non-evaluated wetland on the retained lands. MBCA has no comments and does not object to the application as currently proposed.
Do they have any comments with respect to the slope stability?
MBCA does not have any comments with respect to the slope stability. According to our information sources, we do not have it mapped as a stable slope hazard, but would be supportive of reviewing the study to determine an appropriate building envelope on the lot.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to the panel and ask them for their comments, please. Ms. Chandler, any comments?
Two, which relate to the slope stability study and the EIS. For the EIS, I think that's an appropriate condition to define the building envelope out of the natural heritage system, given that the lots the lot does encroach into it, but I understand why. I just think that that's a reasonable ask. The slope stability study, I don't. That's a super shallow slope, and the EIS will actually probably show the development envelope to be outside of that slope area, closer to the road. I don't really see what it will accomplish. And there's no trigger for it other than a gentle sloping of land towards the back and outside of the lot. So I would be comfortable with removing the slope stability study, but I do think the EIS condition is appropriate.
Thank you, Ms. Chandler. Mr. Vervoort?
I agree with Ms. Chandler's comments. I think the EIS and the building envelope will address any slope stability concerns. The only thing I would say is maybe we could condition the slope stability study in the event that the building envelope encroaches into the slope. But my guess is the house will be closer to the road anyway, so it won't be a factor. So, but I'm fine with removing it as well.
Thank you. Mr. Otto?
I agree with what's been said because I believe it would cost a couple of $1,000 probably to do a slope stability study, and the buildings are already there. And I do not think the new building is going to encroach in that area. So, yeah, I agree 100% with what's been said.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I'm happy with 5, 6, and 11 gone. Just wondering about, did I see somewhere a rezoning, or am I looking at the wrong one? Must be the other one. No,
Not this one.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there may be a temporary rezoning required because the severance will have accessory buildings and no primary use. So there was a comment that may be required until such time that a house gets built. and we're okay with that. We don't want to remove the structures, obviously, so we'll do a temporary rezoning if needed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I would like to ask the panel for approval of this application with all conditions, save and except for condition number 5, mineral resource impact assessment report, condition number 6, the noise attenuation study, and condition number 11, slope stability report. All others will remain. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Clark. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you. Now moving on to application number 5. Mr. Shipman, are you available?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
Morning.
Can you take the oath concerning the sign posting this morning?
I can take it now, yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do, Mr. Chair, thank you.
So, before we begin, can you just confirm the different measurements that we're dealing with here? There's been one change, but I'd like to make sure that we have the correct measurements for the severed land. How many meters of frontage are there?
88.5, Mr. Chair.
And how about the depth of the?
That remains the same at 86.
And the lot area?
Changes from 0.59 to 0.76 hectares.
Thank you very much. And is there any changes to the retained land?
No, I mean, the area is slightly reduced, but the 43 hectares is only an estimate anyways. The small difference really doesn't change that, and it has no bearing on the zoning.
Thank you, sir. Could you please though give us a brief description of your application today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is, I believe, a fairly straightforward surplus farm dwelling severance, whereby the applicant, being a bona fide farmer, wishes to dispose of the house and accessory buildings as surplus to his needs. We are aware that the retained land will be required to be rezoned as a condition of approval to prohibit residential development. We recently had some concern raised in the second report coming from the Conservation Authority, stemming from the Ottawa Septic System Office. I addressed those concerns with Terry Davidson at the Septic System Office, and we increased the width of the severed parcel to allow for more clearance between the building and the proposed westerly property line in response to concerns vis-a-vis replacement area for any replacement septic system that may be required in the future. So we've received that approval from Mr. Davidson, and I recently received comment back from Mr. Tieft that planning was in agreement with that change, which is why you're seeing the sort of abrupt recent change to the application. But I believe we've satisfied the concerns of all those involved.
Thank you, Mr. Shipman. You're aware of the 4 conditions that are on this application, should it be approved?
I am, Mr. Chair. In view of the recent back and forth with the Septic System Office, I would suggest that condition number 3 is redundant and would only add sort of additional administrative work involved to clear that condition when we've directly addressed it with the Septic System Office already.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'd now like to ask Mr. Tieft to make some comments with respect to this application.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the city has no further concerns or comments for this one.
Do you agree with Mr. Shipman's request to have condition number 3 removed?
Yes, I believe so.
Now I'd like to ask our conservation partners if they've got any questions or comments concerning this application.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the OSSO has no objections to the proposed consent application based on the revised drawings, adjusting the proposed lot lines to allow for the replacement sewage envelope. The NVCA also does not have any concerns and does not object to the application as currently proposed.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to move on to the panel and ask them for their comments or questions. Mr. Otto.
I'm in favor of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Support.
Thank you. Mr. Revort.
Haven't seen Mr. Shipman here for a while, so it's good to see Mr. Shipman back. Just a quick question on the retained lands. Since the severed lands are being widened, wouldn't the frontage of the retained lands reduce to 351 or is 371 correct? I just wanted to confirm that detail.
Sorry about that. 287 plus, yes, the frontage did change to 351 to the north of the severance. That distance has changed from 84 to 64, giving the total frontage made up of two portions of 351 meters, more or less.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that for the record. Other than that, I have no concerns with the application. Thank you.
Ms. Chandler, any comments?
None, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask the panel to approve this application with 3 conditions. Condition number 1, notice on title for quality and quantity of groundwater. Item number 2, road widening of 15 meters. And number 4, zoning bylaw amendment. Item number 3, independent sewage and drainage is to be removed. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Shipman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, now we're going to move on to application number 7. This has to do with 930 Smith Road. And is Jean-Paul Boisvert here?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members.
Good morning. Can you take the oath concerning the sign posting this morning?
Absolutely.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? You swear?
I swear.
So I would like you to provide us with a brief description of your application today, sir.
Sure. So our intent for the property at 930 Smith Road is to develop the DR3 land into a new rural neighborhood that maintains a rural and village character. We divided the existing parcel into 7 irregularly shaped lots that vary in size. And then the analysis of the septic systems and the hydrogeological reports were used in designing and maximizing the layout. So we got this land that has slopes and it's very tough to get 7 lots in, but we needed to maximize that. So the land is irregular, but we weren't able to figure out another way to get 7 lots, given that there's a huge slope in the middle. So we talked to our, so for our hydrogy and our, for everything, and we have a slope impact assessment. We made sure that we weren't building on any slopes. The groundwater assessment, it has a draft report, so we do have enough water. We're just tinkering with it a little bit to make sure. So our as a condition, we know that it will be required to have a full stamped assessment of the water, hydro-G. So basically, we are keeping within the rural and village character of the neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask, first, before I do that, I'd like to make note that there are 10 conditions on this property, on this application. Are you aware of those 10 conditions, and do you agree with them?
No, I don't agree with number 4 and number 8. So the noise study and vibration study, I would like to see if we can strike the condition. So the railway is triggered because it's within 75 meters of a railway corridor. But the railway hasn't been, if you look at Geo Ottawa, it hasn't been there at least since 1976, which is a long time ago. It's 47 years ago at minimum. And it's currently a pathway, a walking pathway that's very widely used for biking, walking dogs. So we don't think that in any near future that it's going to be changed back into a railway. So we'd like to say that see if that could be, that the condition could be strike from the conditions.
Okay, and number 8.
So number 8's a big one. So it's a pedestrian path, and we feel that. Objective 2.1 states that there should be an improvement of pedestrian connectivity along Colonial Road, Smith Road, and Trim Road, as well as having sidewalks on these roads. So that's the objective. But the 2.1 objective clearly recognizes the 3 roads listed, front commercial, mixed use, and school zones in the commercial district of Navan, and are intended for those areas. Granted, we recognize that creating pedestrian paths in the commercial zones would unquestionably improve pedestrian connectivity to schools and stores and shops in the area. But the land in question is far from the commercial zones. It's 880 meters away. So the section fronting Smith Road is in a residential zone, residential characteristics comparable to the neighborhoods, streets of Meteor Avenue, Mustang Street, which do not have any pedestrian sidewalks or pedestrian scale lighting. So we feel that it's very far away, and we're trying to maintain our rural area, and the objective 2.1 is really for the downtown area. So we don't feel that it recognizes that, even though the name of our Smith Road is the same as in the objective. It's really not the same road. It's far away from it. It has an intersection in between the two. So we feel that it doesn't recognize the distance between the two areas of the regular Smith Road in the downtown area to where this lot is.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'd like to ask Mr. Graham to make some comments on behalf of the city, please.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the railway corridor, that corridor is still owned by Via Rail, although it's used as a pedestrian connectivity pathway at the moment. It's still owned by Via Rail. And so it is up to them whether they create that corridor, use it for high-speed rail in the future. There's still the possibility that it could be a railway again. So it's consistent with our official plan policies that for railway corridors within this threshold, we ask for these noise studies, as future development could change the characteristics of the noise in that area. As for the pedestrian route, so this is a large development for a severance application, 7 lots. Often these applications would be through a plan of subdivision. If this were a plan of subdivision, we would certainly ask for sidewalk connectivity. So in spite of that, we're still asking for pedestrian connectivity, as that's a stated goal within the village plan. A large goal of village plans is to increase pedestrian connectivity, and this would create a link from the pathway to the downtown sort of area of the village. So we would request that this condition be included in this application.
Thank you, sir. I would like to ask our conservation partners for comments with respect to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our concern has been the slope that's identified in the schedule of the official plan is potentially unstable. We have received a revised geotechnical study that has additions that seem to address our concerns. We haven't completed the technical review yet, so we're asking that the completion of this study be made a condition of approval. I just note that our regulated area includes a slope that's on the east side of this property, so that geotechnical study should talk about the regulated area and the slope that's adjacent to the property as well. We're also asking for a condition that a survey be done that shows the toe and the top of slope and all setback requirements, so that those requirements can be easily implemented. And then finally, the OSSO has concerns about septic systems as proposed. They note that not all the wells on and adjacent to the property have been identified in their setback requirements for their septic system permits. So they're asking for a plan that shows all of those wells, and basically that all the setback requirements have been met. And I recommend that that be a condition of approval as well, just so that there's no surprises at the end.
So they don't appear in those 10 conditions that we have already?
I haven't seen the list of conditions. They may be there.
Okay. Yeah, I'll read them out to you. Notice on title quality, quantity of groundwater. Notice on title for sensitive soils. Road widening of 13 meters. Notice on title for noise and vibration. Adequacy of aquifer report. Cash in lieu. Zoning bylaw amendment. Agreement for pedestrian connection on Smith Road. Geotechnical report. Site plan showing all wells. They all there for you?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'd like to now move on to the panel and ask the panel for their comments. Ms. Rewart, I'm sorry, Ms. Chandler. Sorry, Martin.
Few questions to city staff with respect to the noise study. I mean, I understand that that rail corridor is still held by a railway interest. What would you expect the outcome of a study like this to be? And how would it be implemented on these lots?
Thank you, Chair. So the noise study would have to address potential noise from future rail development or what the rail corridor could support. So it's not about the existing noises, but whether the future development would impact how these new lots are developed. And it may include mitigation measures that would have to be registered on title for the appropriate building design to accommodate the increased noise.
Okay. The other question was about the pathway, the sidewalk. So am I to understand that the pedestrian pathway, now you said connection to provide connection to, I'm just not clear, like wrap it around Smith Road and provide connection up to Smith Road, I guess is how that works. But you weren't suggesting it provide connection to the rail corridor pathway, or were you?
So the only requirement would be for it to be along the frontage of the lots, but it would improve the connection between where that current pathway is along the rail corridor and towards the more downtown area. So through development, we slowly improve the connection, and we would not be asking for a full sidewalk. We would be asking for a wider paved shoulder to allow for pedestrians and cyclists to safely traverse along Smith Road.
Okay. Generally, if this had gone through a plan of subdivision, I think that sidewalk condition would be a given. And frankly, on this, I think it should still be included. I'm a little bit on the fence about the noise study one way or the other, because even if it was done, I don't really understand what would come out of it other than the design of the homes, perhaps. And given the other residential development that's right up against that corridor in the village, I'm not so sure that it's going to make an enormous difference, but I'd be interested to see what the other panel members have to say.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chandler. Mr. Otto.
I guess I've just got a comment. Number one on the rail corridor. I have difficulty with this because I'm aware of a situation a couple of years ago where people that were farming alongside that rail corridor had to put up new fences because they couldn't keep the people off the pathway off. And CN absolutely refused to do anything about the fences. So I got a great deal of difficulty thinking that we shouldn't ask this development to pay for any kind of noise study, because it's never going to happen. Maybe we could just put it as a warning on title that it's in a rail corridor that could be reactivated. That would make it easier and cheaper. My other question or concern is in regards to pathways. Do they connect to anything, or will they connect to anything? Because most of that area, I believe, doesn't have any sidewalks or anything existing right now. And it would make no sense to me to make this person put in pathways that don't go anywhere and don't connect to anything.
Mr. Graham?
So those are my comments.
So the required pathway link would not connect to necessarily any existing pathway directly, but part of the goals of these policies is to slowly improve over time the connection as development happens along these areas. So it would not immediately fix a direct link between the village and between the pathway, but piece by piece through development, that is sort of the goal of the planning document, to improve the connectivity through development.
Okay, thank you. Did we lose Mr.? Oh, well, I think we lost one of our members. Okay, Mr. Revort, can you please make a comment if you have any? You're muted, sir. You're still muted, Mr. Revort.
Apologies. I agree with the comments that are made. I don't think a noise attenuation or vibration study is going to add much given the existing developments. I think a notice on title, just notifying homeowners that there is a rail corridor nearby, would be sufficient to address those concerns. I agree with Ms. Chandler. I think what's being asked for pedestrian access is not asking too much from the developer, and certainly would have been required if a plan of subdivision had been registered. So a paved shoulder along the road for pedestrian access, I think, is reasonable in circumstances. So otherwise, I'd be fine with all the other conditions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lewis, any questions or comments?
Yeah, my screen goes black, but I can hear everybody. It's off and on. I don't know. Yeah, the noise study. I don't agree with that, because let's face it, if there was going to be a train put back through there again, I think the public meetings would be a very interesting forum to attend. Wouldn't want to miss those. So I don't see that ever being used again. As for the pathway, I don't know. I'm willing to not address it and take it out, but it's close either way. So I'll let you decide that, Mr. Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Lewis. Well, for me, the noise attenuation study, I'd remove it. I don't think it's relevant for this particular part of the world. And on the sidewalks, I live in a community that has a bunch of sidewalks, and each community, as is being built all around, is being asked to do the same thing. I think it's a really wise thing to do. It gets people in the different residential areas over to another residential area more safely. So I'd be in support of leaving the condition number 8 in place. All that being said, I'd like to now ask the panel for approval of this application. First of all, I'd like to ask you for approval of 10 conditions, save and accept number 4, notice on title for noise and vibration study. All those in favor with 10 conditions with item number 4 removed, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Boisvert. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to move on to application number 8. Application number 8 has to do with 1980 Phelan Road. Mr. McGill, are you available? Or Ms. Gilchrist? Good morning, Ms. Gilchrist. I can see you down there. Can you please unmute yourself? There you go. Good morning.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep. Thank you. I would like to administer the oath concerning the signposting on the property. Will you take that oath today?
I'd prefer if we could pass it. I see that Mary and Mike are here, as they are located on the property and can better confirm that the sign's still posted.
Sure.
Yes, I am here and I can take the oath. It's Mary McGill.
Good morning, Ms. McGill.
Good morning.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Okay. So, Ms. Gilchrist, would you like to give us a brief description of your application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we were able to meet with staff of Wednesday last week to discuss the panel's comments that we heard at the hearing on April 5th, and a revised consent sketch and addendum planning letter were submitted April 13th. And I'd be pleased to provide a short presentation if the coordinator is able to share their screen with the materials. Perfect, thank you. And next slide, please. Again, just a quick overview of the property, 72 hectares, designated agricultural resource area and zoned agricultural and rural commercial. Next slide, please. So the revised consent, we know, although the previous consent proposal for the new farm holding generally met the intent for a new farm holding for the official plan and zoning requirements for lot area and frontage. We heard the members' concerns with respect to the consent potentially fragmenting the currently cropped farmlands and not being desirable in terms of keeping the existing farmland as one lot for its long-term protection, of course, as the PPS directs. So in discussion with planning staff, we're kind of between two policy approaches, in that the previous proposal was under the policies for a new agricultural use, but kind of again fragmented that currently farmland, and between a kind of a residence surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation. So really looking at the opportunities for consolidation of farmland within the agricultural resource area. So it is fully acknowledged that the existing business does not technically meet the definition of a residence surplus to a farming operation. However, in terms of, when we're speaking to the intent, it's an existing, well-established business that's not associated with or integral to the operation of the farm parcel itself, and where this severance would facilitate the sale of the farmland to a local farmer via farm consolidation. The existing business, again, it's operated on the subject property for more than 35 years, completely separate from the farm, as the farm's been leased to a local farmer and is used for the growing of crops for the past 38 years. So the revised proposal would sever approximately 62 hectare parcel from the existing 72, and the retained lands would be approximately 10 to 11 hectares and would contain the existing business. Next slide, please. So the severance line between the farm and the business, as proposed before the committee today, follows the existing zone boundary between the rural commercial zone and the agricultural zone. And so, speaking to the intent of the PPS policies, OP policies, it's to keep that surplus piece as small as possible to maximize the amount of land for the farm parcel, and that's understood. The way it's been proposed, many discussions between myself and the owners, is that this is the minimum size needed for the ongoing successful operation of the business. And so it does include a small amount of the cropland just to the kind of south and east of the business to accommodate the relocation of existing food gardens and greenhouses, which currently fall on the agricultural parcel. And so those would be relocated, but they're critical to the venue's farm-to-table restaurant, and it's very reasonable to think that they also may be expanded in the future. So it allows a bit of kind of wiggle room for that relocation, but also expansion of food production in association with the business. And the business also has walking trails around where you can see the wooded area, as well as beehives. So again, just keeping kind of enough of a buffer to the business to ensure that it can continue the various things it does now and have a reasonable expectation for any other kind of supporting ancillary uses they need to keep the operation successful. And lastly, that zone boundary line follows an existing drainage ditch between those fields. It's a little bit hard, it's a little bit offset in the image, but it also becomes, you know, a natural boundary line between the two parcels, having that kind of physical delineation between the two. And again, just speaking to the fact that all of the infrastructure structures associated with the business on 1980 Phelan Road would be contained on that parcel and would also be within the correct permitted zone. And again, so this proposed severance would ensure the existing approximately 62 hectares, 150 acre farmland portion would be then preserved for long-term agricultural use through farm consolidation. And I'll wrap up there for the presentation. We do have a slide that shows the previous proposal and the floodplain mapping if there's any questions that come up, but we're happy to discuss that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I note that there are 4 conditions if this application is approved. Are you aware of those, Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes, and if I may, through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a few maybe points of clarification on a number of the conditions, if we can have a few minutes to review.
Please go ahead.
So the first condition in the planning report is with respect to a private approach. And there's a private approach that exists now for farm field access. It's on Third Line Road at the top of the hill outside the floodplain. So my question is, and it's more administrative, is how does one go about clearing a condition such as this, where it exists today? We're not proposing a new private approach. So we're not, you know, submitting a new application under the private approach bylaw.
Okay. Mr. Harrigan, can you answer that question? Just that one, and we'll keep on going.
Thank you. To you, Mr. Chair, that question was requested by the right-of-way department, just to ensure that we weren't creating any new parcels that wouldn't comply with any future private approach permits. To my understanding, it is just a written confirmation that any of these future private approach permits will abide by the bylaw, just so we're not running into this case where people believe they have to apply for a private approach permit that doesn't necessarily meet the bylaw. So this would just be a written confirmation to the right-of-way department.
Okay, Ms. Gilchrist.
Certainly. So, sorry,
Okay.
Written confirmation from the owner attesting that it's there now, and then just getting that clearance and providing it to the committee. Is that correct? Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Harrigan.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it would be provided directly to the right-of-way department from the owners, just stating that they, both the severed and the retained, already have their existing parcels, their existing private approaches, and then just an acknowledgement that any future right-of-way permits or private approach, will comply with the bylaw.
Okay, excellent.
Anything else on those conditions, Ms. Gilchrist?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great, thank you very much. And before we move on, there is some amendments were made to the notice.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chair. I apologize. That was it for number 1, but I did have a couple other questions on other conditions.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
So back to the condition number 2, and with respect to the right-of-ways. So it is understood that the city, through the official plan, has the authority to take these widenings, and through the preparation of the draft reference plan for the consent, that would be done. I just would like to ask the committee again, for the Phelan Road portion, though it is designated a collector in the rural area, the portion of Phelan Road east of Prince of Wales, it's about 1.5 kilometers, and it's a dead end. And there are a lot of existing trees within what would become the right-of-way limit that are really integral to the business in terms of screening, backdrop for the weddings, etc. And I would just ask for the committee's consideration just for the Phelan Road frontage with respect to the widening, whether or not that is necessary. Certainly it's understood on Prince of Wales and Third Line, no issue there. It's really the Phelan Road frontage that we're concerned about.
Mr. Harrigan, do you see any compromise here? Or
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, unfortunately, we cannot compromise on that. That has been a very, very firm position by the Transportation Department as well as Legal Services. This is required. It's not necessarily just to expand the road, but any upgrades to the road, improvements, drainage ditches, anything along those lines. We really do need that full 26-meter right-of-way protection to really do any of these types of improvements, such as drainage. The comment about the tree protection, actually, once the trees are moved over into the city right-of-way, they actually get protected underneath the bylaw. So there would be additional tree protections for that. So unfortunately, that is not something that we could compromise on that one. And it has been strongly expressed by Legal Services that there would be grounds for an appeal.
And you can appeal if you'd like to do that, Mr. Gilchrist.
No, certainly. And I think that having the comfort of knowing the trees will be protected, that's really the important part there. Nope, that's understood. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have two other questions. One relating to condition 4 and confirmation of purchase for farm consolidation. And it's, again, more an administrative concern on how to clear that condition. Is the expectation that the owners would enter into a conditional purchase and sale agreement with a farmer, and then that documentation is what would clear the condition? It's a chicken and an egg thing, because you can't sell it before it's created, but we can't create it before we prove it's sold. So just want to make sure that we understand administratively how to clear that and what the expectation is.
Mr. Harrigan?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. It would be, in this case, a binding agreement of purchase and sale for the future. Is that conditional purchase and sale, just showing that, yes, this farm, the vacant farmland is being bought by a bona fide farmer, and just that purchase and sale agreement is there. So just something on record noting that it is being sold to a bona fide farmer.
Okay, understood. And lastly, through you, Mr. Chair, condition number 5 with respect to the site plan agreement on title. In discussion with the owners, our understanding is that there is no existing site plan registered on title for the 1980 parcel, which is the subject of today's consent. Strathmere, different ownership group, part of the business 1998 parcel, which is that small one in kind of the northwest corner, does have a site plan agreement on it and had gone through a process in previous years for development related to the business. But I would just like to clarify that our understanding is that 1980 does not, and I understand the intent of this condition again is that the farmland is not subject to a site plan application. So in our perspective, we could clear that very easily just by saying there's no site plan, but I just didn't want to run into any issues with planning staff with respect to, a site plan that's not on the property now.
Okay. Mr. Harrigan?
Thank you. It was my understanding that a site plan had already been registered there after speaking with management. I'm waiting for further clarification on that in terms of the condition. Perhaps we could modify so the management could respond. If there is no site plan on title currently, then we can clear the condition right away.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, that's great. Thank you for that confirmation.
Perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, we could amend the condition just to state that the owners provide evidence if required to the satisfaction. So just add additional language that it may not require any evidence at all.
Thank you. Okay, so now, again, moving on to some just administrative items. You made some amendments to the notice and having to do with the severed land. It will have a combined frontage of 598.07 meters from the previous 651.47. Is that correct, Gilchrist?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I am just pulling up the severance sketch. And that does sound, sorry, could you repeat the number for the frontage on the severed?
598.07.
Through you,
That's
Mr. Chair,
yeah, thanks,
I had
Sean.
made a note in my planning comments that the frontages hadn't changed from each sketch. The frontages have remained the same. It was just when I went through and reviewed the revised sketch, I noted that the calculations for the combined frontages may have missed one of the portions. So the original frontage, combined frontages, was listed as 598 and 0.07 meters. And then when I did my revised calculations, just to confirm everything, I got 651.47 meters of combined frontage. Again, the frontages haven't changed. It was just I redid the calculations.
So it is 651.47 meters, Ms. Gilchrist?
That does sound correct.
And Mr. Harrigan, you agree with that?
Yes.
And the lot area of the severed is to be 61.9 hectares. Is that correct, Ms. Gilchrist? You've had 6 plus minus 62.
Correct, through you, Mr. Chair.
And you agree with that, Mr. Harrigan?
Yes.
Thank you. The retained land. So the lot area is supposed to be 11 hectares. That's correct, Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes, that's correct.
That's the only administrative items I needed to clear up. Now I'd like to move on to our conservation partners and see if they've got any comments to make.
Yeah, through the chair, I don't believe the updated drawings were circulated to our office for review. That being said, listening in on this hearing, we have no objections to the changes proposed. The issues identified related to the floodplain are being maintained with this proposal versus our previous comments. Specifically, the floodplain that's shown in the presentation is soon to be updated through the Stevens Creek floodplain mapping review. It is expected to expand on this property, but both the retained and severed lands would have sufficient area outside those where we're expecting the floodplain to go for future development, if that's even for agricultural reasons. So we're not concerned with the application, just advising that the applicants are aware that those natural hazards exist in the property, and if there are developments, they should call us first.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lalonde. Now I'd like to move on to the panel and ask the panel if they've got any comments. Mr. Vervoort, have you got any comments or questions?
I noted that, excuse me, Mr. Harrigan had commented on the conditions, but we hadn't really heard from him yet on the department's position. So maybe we should do that first.
Sure. Mr. Harrigan, would you like to comment on the conditions?
Thank you. In general, for the application, the planning department does object because it does not fit any of the severance policies within the provincial policy statement or the official plan. It does fall between a few different policies, so mainly the surplus farmhouse dwelling severances and the severance of an agricultural related use. So it doesn't fit nicely within either of those, but it's kind of in between them. We do note that the intent of the PPS is really to maintain large farm parcels and to try and limit any fragmentation. So to that regard, the condition requiring the rezoning prevent residential development on the vacant farmland does maintain that intent of the PPS. We would note that ideally we wouldn't separate as much farmland kind of with the retained commercial business. It does seem like there may be an opportunity to decrease the amount of active farmland that would be removed. However, we do recognize that they do need some of the farmland there available for some of the commercial business and the farming and the venue there, the farm to table restaurant. We're just cautious about removing quite that much, would be our main concern. Those would be our general comments.
Thank you. Mr. Revort, do you have any comments?
Just a couple. Number one, excuse me, I don't think rezoning or recirculation is required here, although it's a fairly substantial change. It doesn't really change anything on the ground. So I don't think recirculation is required in this particular case. I'm in favor of the application. I think it makes a lot of sense. The the proposed severance follows the existing zoning, and there's a drainage ditch there as well. So there's sort of a natural point where the severance makes sense. This doesn't fit into, it doesn't fit into the box exactly, but I think that's, the purpose of the committee is to deal with these situations. And I think what's being proposed certainly meets the intent of the official plan and the provincial policy statement. The applicants have compromised significantly on what they originally proposed, and I'm in favor of the application. With respect to condition number 4, because this doesn't really fit into a box regarding a farm severance, I'm not convinced that condition number 4 is required because the severed lands are being rezoned anyway. They'll remain agricultural and can't be developed. So I'm not sure that there's a specific need for condition number 4. And then with respect to condition number 5, I agree that, based on evidence that can be provided by the applicant, they can just confirm that the site plan only applies to the commercial portion, which is the retained lands. But other than that, I'm in favor of the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vort. Ms. Chandler, any comments?
First, I just want to give credit to the city's planning department for, reconsidering their position on this and looking for a solution to achieve the objectives of keeping this nice big parcel of agricultural land together. So thank you very much for making our job easier. I think the road widening does apply. I understand the argument. But yeah, the trees should be protected. The purchase and sale agreement, I don't really have a issue with that one way or the other. If the owner is making arrangements to sell this land to a bona fide farmer, I think that would be a good gesture towards the planning department for the effort they put into this. But as Mr. Berger says, it's not like anything else is going to happen to it. So I would be okay with that either way, the condition in or out. And I don't have any other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, any comments?
No, I agree with the application, and I thank everybody involved for coming back again. And basically was what we asked for the last meeting, and I think it's good. I'm in favor of the application. I'm in support of deleting that road widening, but we can't. I'm sympathetic to the people, and I think it is a land grab by the city, and it's not necessary, but that's it. I'm in favor of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, I support the application without number 4.
Thank you very much. Yep, I echo the comments made by Member Chandler and Member Otto and Member Vervoort. It did an outstanding job, Mr. Harrigan. Thank you very much for compromising and making this work. It was very well done. Thank you, Ms. Gilchrist. And thank you very much. Mary, I can't remember your last name. I'm sorry.
Right. Mary McGill. Thank you.
Mary McGill. Thank you, Ms. McGill. So to that end, I would like to ask the panel for approval of this application with the removal of condition number 4 for the agreement of purchase and sale. Also, I'd like to amend the condition number 5 to state that if there are no sub-plan on title, the owner provide evidence, if required, that there is a site plan control agreement applying to the commercial development. So all those in favor of this application, please raise your hands. Great. Your application is approved, Ms. McGill, and thank you very much, Ms. Gilchrist. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're
Take
welcome.
care.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So now we're moving on to application number 2. Say goodbye to Ms. Chandler. Thank you very much for your help today. And let's see, where are we now? Okay, application number 2 has to do with 1391 Huntmar Drive. Tim Eisner, are you available?
Yes, I am available.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to administer the signposting oath. Can you take that signposting oath?
My client, Brian Cadieux, will take the signposting oath. He should be joining any second now.
Is he under the pseudonym Lovebirds?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. I see him, but you're muted, sir.
Still muted, Brian. Oh, there you go.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to administer signposting oath. Can you take that oath today?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I swear.
Thank you very much, sir. So, Mr. Eisner, could you please give us a brief description of your application today?
Okay, I have a short presentation. If the coordinator could put it up, please. All right. So thank you for having me here to hear this application for consent to sever at 1391 Huntmar Drive. Next slide, please. 1391 Huntmar Drive is approximately 2.5 kilometers east of Carp and 3 kilometers west of South March. It's in the rural area of the city, but despite the fact it's in the rural countryside, it is in an area of extensive residential development. As you can see, the property is marked with a blue star here, and all the lots outlined in red are all residential lots. So you can see it stretches far to the north, this property just being one of many lots in this area. Next slide, please. 1391 Huntmar Drive is an undeveloped, oversized lot between two other residential properties. We're seeking an infill severance with no minor variances. And the first consent severs the property into two lots approximately 1.1 hectare in size, with a secondary consent that is reciprocal to the first to allow either lot to be conveyed first. Next slide, please. Zoning on the property is RR3 and requires 60 meters of lot width and 0.8 hectares of lot size. Both properties will exceed the requirements and they're of a similar size to the adjacent lots. Next slide, please. So as you are aware, the part of the official plan that provides guidance to rural severances is in need of an update. We did consult with city planning staff, and Adam Brown, manager of rural development review, provided us with the policies that will likely guide a severance in this case. Of the severances here on the policies on the screen, we conform with 5 of the 6 of them. The only one we don't conform with is policy 2. Proposed lots are opposite a lot containing a dwelling with the front yard is on the same side of the road. As you can see, Lockmarch Golf and Country Club is opposite Huntmar Drive from the proposed lots. However, despite the fact we don't meet policy 2, I believe it is apparent that a severance in this case would represent good land planning. Next slide, please. So reviewing the PPS, section 1.1.5.2 notes that residential development, including lot creation, is permitted on rural lands where it is locally appropriate. The lots can be adequately serviced by private on-site services. They're compatible with the surrounding rural landscape being the same size and use. Lot creation is not going to create additional constraints on rural uses such as agriculture, mineral and aggregate extraction, forestry, or environmental protection. Additionally, we prepared an EIS, which concluded that the proposed lots can be developed without having a negative impact on the natural heritage functions of this area. Next slide, please. So I do understand that we don't meet policy 2, but the committee exists to hear the merits of cases such as this. In this specific case, I believe it is quite apparent that the proposed severance would create lots that fit into the local rural context. This is the only double-sized lot in a row of single lots along this stretch of Huntmar. And there's really no purpose in maintaining its use or its current size. Severance here would represent good land planning, would be locally appropriate as specified by PPS policy 1.1.5.2. And allowing a severance in this area, which is again, extensively residentially developed, won't create any further constraints to rural development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eisner. Now I'd like to, Mr. Eisner, are you aware that there are 6 conditions to this application? Should it be approved?
Yes, I am aware.
And do you agree with them?
Yes, I've talked with my clients about the conditions. They are aware of them, or understand
And
them.
agree. And agree.
And
with
agree.
them.
Yes, and
Thank
agree.
you. Mr. Graham, I'd like to ask you to make some comments. Sorry, no, I'll first ask our conservation partners. Do you have any comments to make on this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair, MVCA does not have any concerns from a natural hazards perspective for the proposed development. MVCA does not object to the application as currently proposed.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Graham to make some comments on behalf of the city, please.
Thank you, Chair. As the applicant noted, this falls under the infill policy for rural severances, and it does not meet all of the 6 requirements. Those requirements all must be met for a severance to comply with the official plan policies. It does not front a lot containing a dwelling where its front yard is on the same road. So the land across the street is zoned as open space. There is not the permission for that lot to be developed with a dwelling. So it does not meet our official plan policies, and therefore we cannot support it.
Thank you, sir. Any comments, Mr. Eisner?
Just that the intent of the PPS is to only limit rural development when it's going to infringe on another use that the rural lands would be used for, such as forestry, mineral extraction, that kind of thing. We're not going to infringe on those uses, so we should be allowed to sever the lot.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask Mr. Vervoorts for some comments on behalf of himself.
Just a question for Mr. Graham. In your planning report, you also indicated the current wording of the rural countryside severance policies would further preclude this development, as it would also require that the retained land be of at least 10 acres. Can you comment on that, please?
Right. So that is the same sort of issue that we've encountered several times with the issue in the rural severance policy. This is sort of the opposite of what we usually see. We usually see larger lots that have the 10 hectares, but also need to meet the policies that are being referenced here. Because of the error in the wording, it's supposed to meet both of these large lot severances and also infill severances. In this case, it doesn't meet either situation. So even after the correct policy is brought forward, it would still not meet the 6 policies, but under the current wording, any severance is supposed to have 10 retained hectares because of the error in the official plan.
Okay, so that's just the usual area we're dealing with. So, okay. I guess when I look at this, it seems to me that again, we're in a bit of an anomalous situation. I think the intent of the policy, or the official plan policy, is certainly to prevent strip development, etc. But it's hard to see how this has a negative impact, given the literally hundreds of houses that are around this existing lot. I know that in the past we've been pretty strict on ensuring that all 6 conditions have been met, especially in outside of rural areas and villages. But I mean, really what we're looking at is basically a built up urban area almost in this case. So I think in the specific circumstances of this case, I would be in favor of the application subject to the 6 proposed conditions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Otto, any comments?
I agree with what Mr. Vervoort has said. When you look at all the lots that have been created, they've been created somehow. There must have been a plan of subdivision going there for country estate lots, and maybe this one that wasn't split up at that time was just a big lot for some reason. But it makes no sense to me not to grant the application.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Yes, support with all 6 conditions.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application with all 6 conditions. Please raise your hands if you agree. Your application is approved, Mr. Eisner. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe You're welcome. I was going to say you're welcome, lovebirds, but I don't know whether that's appropriate.
We don't know where that came from. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's a nickname we have at a local restaurant when we get called in. But I don't know how that ever got onto there. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. It's good.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So thanks everybody for your help today. And we'll see everybody in about 2 weeks. Thanks again.